everyone. I was just coming on for a second. I hope everyone is well. I was having this discussion and I was talking about work in general. Okay, so I was talking about a group of people. I work in an organization that's partnering or supporting, not partnering, supporting and a larger organization. And we were just talking about a situation where I had where I consistently have to talk to various people throughout the building. And I have witnessed them at their best day and at their worst day. And I've witnessed a lot of things, sometimes day-to-day struggles and sometimes day-to-day accomplishments. And often we do try to take a chance to speak to each other outside of work. So it's a great work relationship. One particular person in general just recently came back into the work schedule. I don't know what the situation is. I do, but I really don't care to share it. And I noticed that overall, her or his perspective of work is very flawed. And this is not a reflection of them. I often think that they themselves are having some grievances with the job, or maybe with the direction of where their career is going. And I don't get to work around this person often. I work with two lovely women, but this particular person actually works in a different separate area of the building, and I don't really get to see her or him. But on several occasions, I have had some engagement with them, and in one particular, I had an engagement with the person was extremely hostile, and I think I got a sense that that was their overall emotion prior to my entering the room. I went back downstairs and I was discussing with two other coworkers, and I just happened to mention because my team, we work all together in a room. I mentioned that I wasn't too crazy about this particular person's demeanor and how they speak. And I kind of felt something, but didn't want to overthink it. And as I said it, everyone in unison said, "Oh yeah, we know who you're talking about." It appears that on several occasions, those of us who had engagement with her or him had sort of witnessed some kind of response that was hostile. And if not hostile, nasty, subtly or aggressively disregard our questions or even a greeting like hello. And so I often, wonder, I do sense what is going on, and it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with probably the situation at work, and maybe this person is feeling like they wish they could come back to something else other than what they're coming back to. To where I say workers' burnout often happens a great deal. Even when we are at the best at our jobs, we will deal with some difficulties because in our personal lives as well as work life or education, conflict is inevitable. It's part of the learning process. It's part of growth. It's part of becoming better at what you do. And so sometimes when you go out to make these attempts to do things, they don't necessarily end like, a perfect show or movie. We all know this. I think it's kind of silly for me to explain. A lot of the times the things that we seek out to do, whether it's been done before, whether we are pioneering it, we have a percentage capability of it not going in accordance to what we expect. So often burnout can happen. Sometimes the demands versus what you can account to or adhere to is much greater, and we are left sort of scrounging for a way to sort of make good on this act and successfully pull through. So with this being said, and I often wonder, with the interviewing process and how we hire people, are we evaluating their coping mechanisms? So this question is just so broad because it's not just limited to whether we should hire someone. I also question as to whether we should be introduced to this in our developmental stage as a part of our education. A lot of the times I also witness with some of our students that a great deal of their difficulty, whether it be socializing, learning, adhering to rules, and getting through the day, deals with their inability to sort of switch on a more positive outlook. And this is not to be expected of children, but maybe later on as teenagers. I do, however, believe that we could possibly introduce a behavior to children that would somehow allow them to recognize or at least be mindful of their emotions enough within their capacity as children to say, I don't feel good today, so let me go and find something to feel good, an outlet, something that's a part of the school curriculum, something that is a part of the school behavior, or even just in general. Children are resilient, but they're resilient in a way that they're not capable sometimes or sophisticated enough to cure their own problems. However, I just feel as though we should educate people on how to change the direction of their emotions, either through positive thinking or through acts and engagement. And even if we can't teach it at that early of an age, should it be something that's taught in college? We often talk about it, discuss it. To some extent, depending on what class you take, whether it's an elective or it's something that's another form of education, whether it's an elective or something else, should it be mandatory that we take a class on how to prepare with the professional world, how to prepare with life in general, and how to prepare with difficulty? I once had an incident where one particular coworker of mine, lovely girl, I absolutely love her, came in one day and says, every time I come in here, I feel like I want to cry. And she was referring to work. To where I was insensitive and I snapped and I said to her, don't say that. If you don't want to be here, you shouldn't be here. There's no such thing as being a victim in this situation because we hold the key to our direction where we want to be. Now, that's not fair to say. I mean, granted, this person may have difficulty being hired somewhere else or whatever the case may be, or whatever the case may be, she was expressing how she felt and she was right and was entitled to feel that way. But I sometimes wonder, when we feel that we're in a rut, do we sometimes reflect the product of work or the process of being a pleasant person in the work environment because we are incapable of sort of transferring from an emotion that's difficult into a positive outlook on things? So my question is, how do we use the energy that sometimes keeps us down and turn it into energy that motivates us to move us up, or change our outlook, or change our agenda, or get through a particular process just by engaging in positive acts? How often do you sometimes come into work and feel that the weight of your work is sometimes impacted by others who do not share the same motivation? Now, let's say it doesn't have to be the same motivation, but at least a capability of saying, today's not a good day. I'm not really feeling positive about being here, but I'm here, and I know the workflow has to continue on, and I'm not going to come in here and make everyone a part of my grievance. And so I really wonder, how often do we perform at our best when we don't feel like we want to be somewhere else? And so a lot of the times we have been in situations, whether it's in school, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in the living conditions or work, where we didn't feel great at one point because a certain amount of things have happened, but somehow we found motivation, we found to get over that huddle, and we're back in a positive place. Some of us never do that, and I realize that more than ever, that some of us never do. And sometimes having that person, this person who never does, can be toxic and destructive to a business. So could you possibly make that a line of question when interviewing someone? Have you ever been disappointed? Have you ever dealt with failure, and how? What are your coping mechanisms? How do you balance your life and work when your personal life is not at its best? Or how do you handle life when your work life is not at its best? If there was a way that your job could help you, or if there were resources that we could provide, what would you tell us coming into the company? Tell us about a time where things were so difficult and you knew you were in the wrong and you found a way to get back in the right. I just wonder, do we ever question this? Because I think that we have now, because we have such easy access to the greatest asset, which is humanity, that sometimes we come on with an attitude as though everyone's replaceable and we don't invest in the people that we hire. I just wonder, how well would a company do, or an organization do, if we realize or recognize someone's having difficulties, provide an outlet of resources, not engage with their decision process if not needed, and if we hired someone who is capable of going to the resources or finding it within themselves and doing better, because it's much easier to keep someone and help them through the process than say, if they're not happy here, their workflow isn't good, get rid of them. And at the same note, that's something that should be looked at with someone who is internally looking at their job that way. You know, there are people who chronically leave from job to job to job to job. When I was younger, I was one of them. But I actually learned to love what I do and to take out the process of doing things because I have to and doing things because I want to. And in this job where it's a lot more taxing in emotion, I have often found great relief in going into an area, sort of hitting the reset switch button, or escaping through a different work task that makes me come back to being positive and returning back to the one that was difficult. I sometimes even find working with people that are difficult or are downright even just inconsiderate a lot easier by humbling myself and not feeling entitled to burst out and complain. Voicing my opinion is something that I do quite often, as you can tell. I don't have a problem with expressing myself, but at least not having outbursts or making them feel as though they don't want to be at work. Correcting my own behavior, knowing when I do wrong, which is something that happens more often. Matter of fact, it just happened recently with a coworker. So how do we interview people to find out when you go wrong? Do you usually continue to feel bad about it, find out what it is, or do you find out what it is, confront it, and sort of hit that reset button to be back into the place of happiness? It's a very difficult task. I'm saying it as though there are just 3 steps. Sometimes for some people there are several. This weekend I decided to just do the things that are going to keep my energy up. And then Sunday, I'm going to relax and take into stride all the other things I have to do, which has to do with education. And now I kind of feel like when I return back for the week, because it was so overwhelming last week and because so much was going wrong and some little tisk of the coworkers, that I'm going to make my list. I'm going to get through my list. I'm going to successfully attack these problems, and then I'm going to also come in and try to be a positive force, even to the people that really upset me last week, in a sense of being inconsiderate. I have since not even worried about it. Like, I kind of dropped it because I don't want to hold on to it. See, this is a place of hitting the reset button and getting back to being positive. It's not that what they did doesn't matter. It just means that, they're human, and what they did was probably not the best decision, but at the end of the day, they're my coworkers, and somehow we have to find a way to not upset each other so much, and more importantly, realize that we are all there to do a task. And so, coping mechanisms. How do you deal with difficulty? How do you deal with the fact that you have your children at home and things aren't great? They're not doing what they're supposed to do. Husband or wife relationship is not that great, or partner. Or the fact that you're dealing with difficulties like your parents are getting sick or not feeling well, or difficulties with your finances. How do you cope? How do you hit that reset button? Or even conflicts with coworkers or superiors. How do you find your happiness, your mojo? Should we really be interested in not so much the details, or be interested in hiring people who have outside ambitions that make them happy? Because people who have outside ambitions usually are very genuinely happy people, because they have more than one goal throughout life. And accomplishing them, or at least living within that activity, is something that really, really, really makes them happy. And so coping mechanisms, should that be one of the things that are required? And when I say asking about coping mechanisms, I don't mean putting it on the ad when you place for the job, because someone can easily say or gather these thoughts, but presenting it to them immediately in the interview process. What are your coping mechanisms? When life is not really doing everything for you, or the job may be difficult. Do you know how to get from a place of happiness or sad, or do you know how to problem solve your own problems? Okay, you know how to problem solve the company's difficulties, but what about yours? So I just often wonder, do we pay attention to that? Is it something that should be required? And should it be a hiring process? And more importantly, to those who are in college, should it be introduced as a lesson or a requirement, a part of getting your degree? Because a lot of the times I have found, regardless of how educated the person is or not, they can be incapable of really understanding, being mindful of their emotions, their energy, and just their place in life, and also how to problem solve the things that are not easy to see and grasp as far as physical, but emotional. So I was just interested in hearing about that, because I really think that it's something that should be considered. I think a lot of the times the greatest and successful person, or persons who are capable of sort of maneuvering through life and getting through it, are people who don't heavily rely on the exterior, but heavily rely on the interior. I don't know. Just my thoughts. But that's me rambling on. I just wanted to leave a vlog. And I will also be going to my blog too. I'll be posting some. I just look out for my other one. I actually wrote something about grad school and some of the difficulties and tasks and how funny it is. They actually put a little humor into it. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thanks.